this morning to be speaking with you guys this morning and continuing our series on keeping Jesus at the center, really focusing on putting God at the middle of everything that we're doing in this season.
I'm supposed to do the intro, so she was sorry. So we're already off to a bad start, people. So we do kind of have this kind of theme as the only way to protect this, what this season will try to take is keeping Jesus at the center. And so as we're going through all these different things, we have, you know, the center and our joy, our wonder, our hope. And as we're going through this, it's just been a really great, last week Ben did a great job of kicking off the series on joy. If you weren't here, or if you, were here but didn't really pay attention, it's online, so you can go and watch it. I highly recommend you go, and it's on the website. It's on the YouTubes. You can find it and go and watch it. It impacted me. It was a great thing for me to hear. And what's crazy is I think this is about the third Christmas series that I've actually got to be a part of. Northbridge's been around, 6 years? So this is our sixth Christmas, something like that. And I've done 50% of them. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's pretty fun. I remember we did Christmas at the movies one year. I did Arthur
And you're
Christmas.
super excited because you get to do it with your wife this year.
Yeah, that's totally it. No, it's great. I love Christmas. It's my favorite time of the year. It's my favorite season. I literally love everything about Christmas. I love the Christmas trees. I love the lights. I love the hot cocoa. Anybody else a hot cocoa fan? Anybody? Yeah. I've been making hot cocoa every morning, especially when it was snowing. I was like, cocoa vibes, right? Like, you got to throw those on. I love the music. I love the snow. Yes, I love the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, and if you're not, then we'll pray for you, and that we'll cast that out of you.
We can ship you off somewhere warm because we want
a white Christmas. And then after that it can go away, right? Then it's fine because then winter doesn't need to drag on till June like it normally does. So I love everything about Christmas, and I love Christmas music. Anybody a big Christmas music fan? Yes. Anybody a Christmas music fan? I have this playlist that's like 300 and some songs long, and every time I just put my favorite artists and songs on there.
Anytime someone comes out with a new Christmas album, he adds the whole album to the page.
Pentatonix Christmas, like they're the best. Like,
Michael
you know what I'm talking
Bublé,
about? Michael Bublé. He's only put out one, but Pentatonix. Like I just put the Christmas albums on there, and then like on my playlist, I end up skipping like 75% of the songs because I'm like, I actually don't like this song. And then instead of getting rid of the song on my playlist, I just skip it every single time. I'm like, okay, I'll just skip this one. And I should just go down. Probably on like 50 songs would probably be on my playlist. But this year we found an old school classic Christmas playlist. It's just like the classics, like Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Burl Ives, Ella Fitzgerald, like just all classic Christmas. And I find myself skipping those songs a lot less. It's Here Comes Santa Claus, like 50 different versions, but I just listen to it every single time. I'm like, I'll listen to it. But I love that. I love the Christmas music and the Christmas season. And this year is kind of a very different Christmas for Annika and I. This season has been probably the hardest Christmas season of our lives. Since we've been married, but honestly, individually, it's been the hardest Christmas season for me. And I know it's maybe rivals Annika's first Christmas when she moved from Canada here, and she was kind of felt by herself. And so, but for us, this is one of the most unique Christmas seasons. And for those of you that don't know, and you're like, why is this unique? In October, I lost my job in October. I was let go as a contract employee with Avista, and they decided that they're redoing some stuff, and they just didn't need me anymore. And so I lost my job, and at the time, I was excited. I know it sounds weird. I was excited. And my first response to that situation was like, well, I wonder what God's going to do in this situation. I wonder how God's going to change it. Like, I wonder what's going to happen. I was really filled with this wonder of what could be and what God was going to do. And then time went on, and I applied for jobs, and I didn't get any jobs. And then I went through some interview processes, and I didn't get this job, and I didn't get the interviews. And Time continued to go on, and I'm like, this is not what I expected this to be. And then in November, actually 1 month ago today, November 7th, I ended up in the ICU for 4 days. If you don't know, I took an ambulance ride. In about a 2-hour span, I went from cleaning up leaves in my backyard to being flat out on my couch, like in and out of like consciousness, like sleeping, but like feeling just awful, throwing up. I passed out. I don't know if you've ever passed out. Not a super fun experience. I literally was walking in the bathroom and just like felt. Annika was downstairs.
It's also not a fun experience when you're watching somebody faint or pass out. Like, it was probably one of the scariest things for me because I've never seen someone and the sounds they make when they're passed out.
Apparently, it's weird.
It's weird. And then I'm freaking out and I'm, wondering, is he like having a seizure? I don't know what's going on. And then he wakes up and he's like, you need to lift up my legs. And I'm like, how is this guy that just passed out telling me what to do? I'm the one that's supposed to know what's supposed to go on.
It was a crash down by the front door. I'll tell you what, though, when you do pass out, the cold floor is your best friend. Okay, it feels really good. That's all I remember is like, this floor feels so good right now. Like, just leave me here for a little bit because I'm feeling really good right now on this floor. But Annika ended up calling the 911, and the ambulance and the paramedics came, and they took my blood pressure, and it was like 60/30. It was like super, super low. Basically, like I was barely alive. And I was like, just give me some fluids, like it'll be okay. And it wasn't a question of if I was going to the hospital. It was like, we're just going to see how quickly we can get you to the hospital at this point, because like we need to get you there. So they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what was going on. I was like, I'm just probably dehydrated. I just need some fluids. I'll be fine. Like, I don't drink water, so that's probably what it is. Like, energy drinks and hot cocoa has been my mainstay. So I probably just need some water. So I go to the hospital. Won't go into all the details, but I ended up finding out that I had RSV, which is like a RSV, flu and stuff like that. I also had this a thing called C. diff, which is a bacterial infection in your gut, and then through all of that, my body was going into septic shock. And so my kidneys were shutting down. Like, my body was just going into, we're going to survive, to protect the brain, the lungs, and the heart. That's basically what your body does when you go into septic shock. It basically takes everything from everywhere else and go. And so the doctors kept saying, the only thing they could tell me was like, dude, you're really sick. Like, they didn't have answers at the time. They're like, you're really sick.
Yeah, he kept saying, there was 2 ER doctors, and it was really scary for me because it's the middle of the night. I've never had to call the 911. And the doctor says, I don't normally tell this to people, but you're really sick. And all I'm hearing is them talking about kidney failure and throwing out all these different words. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what this medical jargon means. But I do know that people sometimes die from kidney failure. And so I'm, in the hospital room and I'm freaking out about, what am I going to do with just me and Theodore? I can't go without Dalton. What are we going to do if he doesn't make it through? Obviously, he's fine, and they figured it out eventually. But in the moment, it was a really, really scary thing to go through. And
yeah, I remember, like, when you get sick and you're like 20, you're kind of like, whatever, brush it off. About a week later, you're super good. You're fine, right? Like, it's like I wasn't even in the hospital. It's been like a month, and I'm still extremely tired and exhausted, and like I'm still dealing with a lot of those things from that moment. And so what's crazy is they gave me 7 liters of fluid when I was in the hospital, which typically when you're dehydrated, you get about 3 or 4. They just kept pumping me full of, like, dude, I don't know if you've had water in the last year, but like you need more. So we're just going to keep going and filling you full of fluids. And so I spent 4 days in the ICU, and I just remember, one, being in a hospital bed suck. If you've ever laid in one, they're the most uncomfortable bed in the history of the world. I don't know why they don't make those more comfortable. You spend a lot of money to be there. You should get a really nice bed, but apparently not. They're not comfortable. And then you're locked in a little room, and the TV's really small. And it's like just college football Saturday, and I can hardly see the TV. And then like the volume I can't really hear. And then all the thing I'm thinking about is like, well, how's Annika doing? Like, she needs help. She's got Theodore. Like, he's only 4.5 months, 5 months at this point. I'm like, how are they doing? She's handling all this stuff. And the realization kind of set in. It's like, I'm not really living for myself anymore. Like, I have 2 other people that I have to take care of. And so this experience was actually way more traumatic for me than I originally thought something like this could be, because it's like, I realized that, like, I need to take care of myself, not for myself, but for the people that are around me. Like, I have responsibilities that I have to take care of. And not bouncing back as quickly as I thought I would it's been very hard for me, because it's like, I've needed help in areas of life that, like, you should need help. Like, to be completely honest, I need help watching Theodore by myself. Like, I just do. And not because, like, it's physically hard, and it is a little bit, but like the mental and emotional side of what I went through has been really draining on me, and it's been really difficult. And like, I don't find the enjoyment that I used to have watching Theodore do things. Like he just started learning how to crawl in the last week. And it's like, that would normally bring me extreme amount of joy. And I'm happy and I'm like, it's cool, but it's like, there's something missing. Like there's this experience that I had that's really weighing on my heart and my soul. And I'm struggling through some things that I'm like, my favorite time of the day used to be the morning. And I'm like, I hate mornings now. Like right now, I hate the morning. I wake up and I'm like, I just can't wait for the time when Theodore goes to bed from like 8 to 9:30 when I can sit, I've done dishes, and I can sit and watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I've been watching a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But I can sit and watch TV and fall asleep on the couch. Like that, I live for the whole day to be that moment of the day. And like I dread the rest of it. And so this experience has been really, and what's unfortunate about this whole timing is it's happening during Christmas. And one of my favorite things about Christmas is the wonder of Christmas. This expectation of Christmas Day, the anticipation of the season, the buildup of, celebrating with family and celebrating with loved ones and buying Christmas presents. Like, I don't get to buy Christmas presents this year for my family because we don't have the money. We're just gonna pay our bills. Now, part of that also, just so you know, is we're going on a cruise in January, which we paid for in September. So I'm like, kind of like, maybe we shouldn't have been paid for this cruise because we could have had that money. But it was already decided we weren't gonna do Christmas. But I still like to spoil Annika, and I still like to spoil family. Like, I was still gonna blow the budget out anyways, and be like, well, I'm still spending money. Like, our budget's $300. I'm gonna spend $600, and I'll get mad if Annika spends $305 on me. I'm like, what are you doing? You broke the budget. And she's like, you doubled the budget. I'm like, yeah, but it's for you, so it's okay. It doesn't really count. And so, but I don't get to do that this year. Like, our tree's probably going to be empty this whole entire holiday season. And this wonder of what Christmas is something that I'm, like, losing. And unfortunately, I've really struggled and lost that wonder for the season. So, like, this message is probably more for me than maybe for a lot of you guys. But I want to define really what the wonder is. And so we have something that we're working off of. And so wonder, and we have a slide up for that, is there's two kinds of definitions we're going to work with. It's a feeling, so it's that awe and astonishment, that rapt admiration, that like anticipation. Think about Christmas morning as a kid, right? The wonder of Christmas, of like, ooh, Santa's coming. I wonder what he's going to bring me. I already knew because I asked Santa when I'd get my photo taken with him, I wanted this, and I was like, he better give me that. And so, or it's a verb, it's the desire, it's the action, it's the curiosity, it's the contemplation. Like when I lost my job, it's that wonder of like, I wonder what God is going to do in this. Contemplating how God is going to show up in this situation, how God is going to do that. And so as we go through this, we have a couple, we're kind of staying on the same line as Ben used last week. We have some, we didn't call them holiday hackers, but maybe we should have. We have three kind of things, three ways that you could kind of lose your wonder, and three antidotes to that. And so as we walk through this, we're going to kind of go through back and forth and do that. So we're going to kind of go through how do we combat those things that steal our wonder, and what are the antidotes to that during this season?
Right. So often, in this season, like Dalton's talked about, we can get caught up in the things of life, right? There's the holiday parties, there's the buying the presents, there's the wrapping the presents, there's the Christmas concerts, there's the family game nights, there's the cookie nights, there's all of the things that you have to do. And the routine of life can just become so big and so all-encompassing that we sometimes can get lost in it. There's so many different things that come, and they try to take away the wonder of our Christmas. So routine is going to be our first point. Wonder can be stolen by routine. I know for myself that I let myself get caught up in this too sometimes. I do love the hustle and bustle, of the holiday season, but there's times when you can, sit down and you're like, I don't even want to go to the next thing, or I don't even have the energy to do what I would need to do for my family because I'm caught up in this routine. And I love this holiday tradition that actually Rosemary started with our family a couple years ago. On Christmas Eve night, we all get together after, we've opened our Christmas jammies, and the kids are usually in bed at this point. But we turn on this adaptation of the story of the shepherds. It's on YouTube. It's about 20 minutes long.
Yeah, 20-ish minutes.
It's a fun little show kind of to watch. But I love it because it helps me recenter my season and recenter what Christmas is about. The routine of life tries to take over, but it's the story of the shepherds as, they go throughout, the time leading up to Jesus's birth. And it has this adaptation of a crippled shepherd and what he went through leading up to the birth of Christ. And the story of the shepherds is picked up in Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 8. I'm going to read. It says, "That night in a field near Bethlehem, shepherds were watching over their flocks. Suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared in radiant splendor before them, lighting up the field with the blazing glory of God. And the shepherds were terrified. But the angel reassured them, saying, 'Do not be afraid, for I have come to bring you good news, the most joyous news the world has ever heard. And it is for everyone everywhere. For today in Bethlehem, a rescuer was born to you. He is the Lord Yahweh, the Messiah. You will recognize him by this miraculous sign. You will find a baby wrapped in strips of cloth, lying in the feeding trough.' Then all at once, the night sky, a vast number of glorious angels appeared, and the armies of heaven. And they all praised God, saying, 'Glory to God in the highest realms of heaven, for there is peace and good hope given to the sons of men.' When the choir of angels disappeared and returned to heaven, the shepherds said to one another, 'Let's go. Let's hurry and find this word who was born in Bethlehem and see for ourselves what the Lord has revealed to us.'" The shepherds were in their routine, right? They were in their normal everyday, in the fields, watching their flocks, protecting them from whatever could have come at any angle. And suddenly they were broken out of their routine, broken out of their normal. When the glorious heaven and angels came down and spoke directly to them. Sometimes we need to be broken out of our routine. We need to acknowledge the wonder and the amazing glory that God has given and given to us in this season specifically. So the antidote to breaking out of routine is becoming aware of the radical wonder of Jesus' birth. In my studying for the message, I was reading about the shepherds, and I was reading about them going through this time, and some scholars believe that the timing and the location was important because it's possible that the shepherds were at a place called Migdal Eder, which is near Bethlehem, and they were there for the Passover. It's a watchtower that is part of the Hebrew faith, and the priestly shepherds would have chosen the most spotless lambs, and they would have placed them in a feeding trough, and they would have wrapped them up in cloth so that they would not be blemished, they would not break their bones or be bruised. And I just love that God was always weaving his purpose, even when it looked like it was broken. Even when we can view the story and we can say, why did God have to be born in a trough? Why did God have to be placed in this lowly place that is not meant for a king of kings? But it was this beautiful picture that he was painting for us, that the spotless lamb, which was the only thing and the only sacrifice that could clear the Jews of their sin, was placed into a manger. The same way that our Jesus, the only one that can take away our sins and give us salvation, he was placed in a manger as well. Jesus came to be our spotless lamb, our perfect sacrifice, and it's all foreshadowed from the very beginning. So to combat routine, mundane, everyday life, we need to be renewed in the wonder of the radical story of Jesus' birth.
The second point we want to go to is one of the ways that you can kind of lose your wonder, which is, this one hits me good, is resistance. It can be stolen by resistance. And what does that mean? Resistance could be the circumstances or the waiting or the situations that you find yourself in. It's those things that push back against the promises of God. So sickness, lack of finances, losing your job. Those are all three personally for me that I threw in there, but maybe you relate to some of those. Maybe it's the waiting period. You've been praying God for a baby, and you've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and you haven't experienced that. All those things that seem to be the opposite of what you expected God to do and when you expected God to do it. I think that's one of the big things is I think we know God's going to come through, and we have an expectation of when God's going to come through for us. And then when he doesn't come through the way And when we want him to, we go, well, hold on. God must not be in this situation. God must not be there for us. I think there's a great story in the Christmas story of a group of men that actually probably faced a lot of resistance in their travels and in their journey during the birth of Jesus. And these are the wise men, the magi. Now listen, the Bible says there was 3 wise men, okay? We won't get too onto this. And I've said this before. There definitely was more than 3 wise men, okay? There was wise men, if you read the scripture, it says wise men bearing 3 types of gifts. Now, in your nativity scene, you can have 3 wise men because they each represent a gift. That's totally fine. But I think there was definitely maybe 100, maybe 50 wise men, magi from the east that came to bring these gifts to Jesus. Let's not make theology out of some, but we don't know how many there were. There's definitely more than one because it said wise men is couple, so at least 2, but I think there was more than 2. I think there was anyways, that's neither here nor there. So, who are these wise men? I think this is important to understand who these wise men were because it helps us understand the resistance that they probably had faced on their journey. So, these wise men, now, this is not maybe 100% it's explicitly laid out in the Bible, but we can infer some things from Scripture and read them and go, these things tie together, and this makes a lot of sense. So, who were these wise men from the east? Well, they were not Jews, they were not Hebrews, and most likely they came from a nation called Babylon. Anybody know who Babylon? Heard of Babylon before? Yeah, Babylon. So maybe they came from Babylon. These were wise men or magi from a different nation, non-Jewish, that were coming to seek the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah. First of all, that's kind of weird, right? If you think about it, they're non-Hebrews, so this is not their Messiah, yet they came to acknowledge this new king of the Jews, right? So, where do these guys come from? Well, let's go back to the Old Testament. You might have heard of a guy named Daniel. Anybody heard of Daniel before? Yeah, Daniel in the lion's den. If you don't know who Daniel is, Daniel's thrown in a lion's den, didn't get eaten. Praise Jesus. But that guy, that's the guy we're going to talk about. So in the book of Daniel, in chapter 2, what happens is there's this king called Nebuchadnezzar, and he has these dreams. And what happens is nobody can interpret these dreams. Daniel actually ends up interpreting these dreams for the king. The king's blown away. Woo, awesome. And so this is what we take up the story in Daniel 2, verse 48. It says, "Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and made him the ruler over the province of Babylon and the chief prefect over the wise men of Babylon." He was in charge of the wise men of Babylon, these magi. Now, why is that important? I think we could say that Daniel, as a Hebrew, who, if you read the story of Daniel, never forgot who he was. There's later in the story, the reason he gets thrown in the lion's den is because he refused to forego his identity and culture, his worship of God, and ended up being punished for it because he never was going to let this new culture of the Babylonians take over who he was and what he believed in his God, which is the God of Israel. And so Daniel, being well-learned, most likely taught these wise men the prophecies of the Old Testament, the prophecies of the coming king. They probably knew about a Messiah that was going to come and save the children of Israel. So Daniel's probably telling these things to these magi. And he would have instructed them of the coming king, and they would have passed that information down from generation to generation. Why do we say that, generation to generation? Because the time of Daniel to the time of Jesus was about over 500 years. So centuries had passed where this story had been. And how do we know that they most likely trade these down? Because when the wise men saw the star, they knew what it meant. They knew that it meant the king had come. And so they were actively seeking out this king. And I think in our lives, we hear God's promises and have hope for what God is doing in life. And we have these moments when we're faced with tough circumstances. We often respond with, I wonder what God is going to do. We have this hopeful expectation. I had that 2 months ago. I lost my job, and I'm like, I wonder what God's going to do. I wonder how God is going to come through. I approached it with this hopeful wonder, this idea that God is going to come through in an unexpected way. Then as time moved and I applied for jobs and interviews and got nothing and got sick and everything seemed to be falling apart, and my once favorite season has now become the season of dread and gloom. And maybe that's the way that you feel too. You face these circumstances, you face situations, you don't have a job, you don't have these things going on in your life. You're struggling with these areas, and This one-time season that you knew as a kid when it was magical and you get to go take a picture on Santa's lap and ask him for some cool gift and hopefully he shows up and gives it for you, like that wonderful season has now become a season of dread. You come to this season and you go, I do not look forward to Christmas. Christmas is my least favorite day of the year. Because of the circumstances and because of the things that we face. I think sometimes our wonder of what God is going to do turns into, I wonder if God is going to do it. And then I think sometimes, and I'll admit, I even asked myself, I wonder if God will do it. I've asked myself that recently, and I think these magi probably asked some of those questions too. 500 plus years of waiting. That's pretty long resistance, right? That's pretty long circumstances of waiting for this sign to come, and they're looking for it. But we know that they actively sought the king. So what is our antidote to resistance? Can we throw that up there? Because I don't remember. No, I'm just kidding. Our antidote to resistance is relentlessly seeking the king. And we'll pick this story up in Matthew 2, verse 1. It says, Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it arose, and we have come to worship him. You know, their journey wasn't overnight. It's likely it took them years to arrive. They actually didn't arrive when the day Jesus was born. It was actually sometime after his birth that they actually had arrived. And they continued to seek regardless of the resistance that they faced. And they went to Herod, and if you know the story of Herod, Herod's like, oh, there's a king of the Jews. Tell me about him. Like, when you find him, come back to me and let me know about him, because Herod wanted to kill Jesus. He didn't want a new king to supersede him. I think the challenge for us is not always looking for the solution or the destination, but what are we seeking in the midst of the situations and circumstances? Are we seeking the king? Because that is the goal that we should always have. It's not that we're trying to seek and trying to get out of the situation. We should be seeking the king in the midst of the situation. Like the wise men come, and they're not looking for the destination. They don't even know where the destination is. They're seeking the king. They're seeking this Jesus, this Messiah that's come. And oftentimes in our lives, I think we seek the destination, we seek the solution, but we don't seek the one who's going to bring the solution. If we changed our mind and our thought process that in the midst of our circumstances, in the midst of this resistance that we face, that's stealing our wonder, if we sought King Jesus in the midst of that, the rest of it wouldn't matter. Who cares how God's going to show up? I know that God's already in the situation. Who cares when God show up? I already know God's in the situation because I'm seeking the king, not the solution, not the answer. I'm seeking the one who's going to give the answer. The outcome of relentless seeking is never the destination, but it's always the king. When we seek Jesus, that's when our circumstances and that resistance seems to become less and less and less and less until that resistance is no more. And the resistance doesn't matter because we have the king.
And I just love also, once again, the picture that God had been painting all throughout history, right? He didn't just wait until Jesus was there to provide for Jesus. But 500 years prior, in the time of Daniel, when time looked dark for the Jews, when they're in captivity, God was already providing for Jesus 500 years before. You know, that those gifts that they were given, the gold, frankincense, myrrh, those are things that would have sustained Jesus and his family in the years that they had to escape Herod and they were, ran to Egypt. And then also in his ministry, these were the gifts that would have set him up way before we had any idea what was going on. God was always working and always planning.
I think what's also interesting is that God set Jesus up. He sets him up not from his own people, but from some people that are a completely different nation in a culture that actually does not, know what's going on. And that's just a sign that God is already working for your situation before the situation even arrived. God's been working for you years before the problem. Like, God wasn't surprised that I got sick because he's like, you don't drink water. But also, he's not surprised that I lost my job. He knew it was coming way in advance, and he's already provided a way out. But the reason I'm kind of in this struggle period is because I've been looking for the solution, but I haven't been searching the king. I've been seeking the king to get me out of the place. Because when I seek the king, that's when the solution is found.
That's right. That's good. I love that. God has definitely already provided for us so greatly. So our third thing that can be stolen maybe, or how our wonder can be stolen is maybe through a rift in a relationship or in a family. And
if you notice, we did 3 R's, just so you know. We're trying to keep the same thing that Ben did last week.
Trying to keep it easy for you. Routine, resistance, and riffs.
Yeah.
So,
ChatGPT helped us pick rift, by the way.
Yeah.
We're not super fan of it, but we need another R word, and so that's what it came up with.
Yeah, it helps us out sometimes. Well, this last year, going through pregnancy and then going through childbirth and the miracle and the absolute miracle that it is to bring life into this world, I think I relate a little bit better to Mary and the story of Jesus' birth a little bit more, having a little bit more understanding, lived it. Obviously, not everyone in this room can experience that, 50%, easily. Or maybe you've wanted to in different ways, but going through that, I cannot imagine the experience that she must have had to go through, right? She was absolutely alone. She could have been judged and shamed by people who didn't believe the miracle that was within her. And I had so much joy that I shared with my family, and I was so excited about it. I can't imagine being in a place that she was, right? She probably experienced deep, deep loneliness in a season where she was excited about, this life that she's bringing and excited about the Messiah coming for her people and saving them. But she could have been feeling very alone within that. No joy, no support. And maybe you've gone through something similar this year. Maybe not like me with having a baby or something like that, but maybe your family has a little bit broken apart this year. Maybe you feel like there was supposed to be joy in this time like there always has been, but I can't have that this year because our family has divorced. Or maybe there's a table and there's a chair that's empty at your table because of sickness or loss. Or maybe there's a rift within a relationship where you desperately want to be, close to this person in your family or in your life, but there's just a rift of maybe unforgiveness or hurt there where you can't share in the joy of the season because of this brokenness. We can all become trapped maybe in this snow globe of happiness of the season where it's all supposed to be joy and happiness, but really, truly, deeply inside, we're drowning. We feel like we're alone. We feel like we're lost. And we feel like, God, where are you in the midst of this? The thing is that we aren't alone. Many of us have been in that boat at different times. And like I said, Mary was in that spot. And I love this season because we get one of God's names, Emmanuel, which hopefully everyone knows that Emmanuel means God with us, right? In this season of loneliness, in a season of resistance, in a season of overwhelming routine, we have Emmanuel, God with us. He's with us in the relational strain. He's with us in the financial doubt. He's with us through every season that we can go through. And hopefully we've been able to paint that for you. That 500 years before God's, birth, he was provided for. Before even time could see, God was there with us. So instead of pondering on God with us, sometimes we can get stuck in the I'm all alone, no one with me, and we wonder, how could there be a season of joy? We wonder, God, where are you? So if Mary went through this, what was something that maybe we can see in her life of how we can counteract that? Back in the story of the shepherds, after the birth of Jesus, they find Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus, and they, worship the King and the Messiah, and it says, but Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. So what is the antidote to rift or maybe all these different things that kind of come against our wonder? What is the antidote? Hopeful pondering. A mind stayed upon the promises of God, that God, you are never going to leave me. You're never going to forsake me. God, you are with me. You are Emmanuel, King of Kings, Prince of Peace. In every situation, you are my Savior. And this wasn't also just a one-time thing for Mary either. Later in Jesus' life, he's 12 and their family comes to Jerusalem for the Passover again. And Mary and Joseph lose Jesus for 3 days, which I think is just absolutely bonkers. Like, they just lost their son. They lost the King of Kings for 3 days. You know, they're looking around for him. Where did he go? And they end up finding him at the temple. He's listening, he's learning, he's questioning the religious leaders. And it says after they, first Jesus says to them, don't you know that I must be about my Father's business? Like, of course I was here the whole time. How did you not know that? But it says in Luke 2:21 that then...
51.
51. My bad. 51.
Notes were wrong.
Then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart. She didn't let the things that went on, the rifts, the routine take over her thought process. She stayed upon that you are Emmanuel with me. In the middle of divorce, in the middle of not having a job, in the middle of uncertainty, God is with us. He is Emmanuel for us in this season.
So if you look at all these, if you can throw up that slide with all the antidotes on there again to these seasons, if you really look at what these are, a renewing in the radical story of Christmas, this relentless seeking, and this hopeful pondering, if you really look at all that, it's kind of what this whole series is about. It's all about being Christ-centered. If you really think about what these things are and what we can do with stuff, it's centering ourselves on Christ once again. When you put Christ in the center of your routine, life doesn't become about getting things done. Life becomes about the relationship that we have with Christ. The antidote to routine is that radical awe of the birth of Jesus. Do you really understand how insane it is that the creator of the universe would come down as a baby, live a perfect life, and offer a complete sacrifice as the unblemished lamb for our sin? The best way to bust up the routine of life is being Christ-centered. My favorite Christmas song, I love all Christmas songs, but my favorites are the ones about Jesus. Shocking, I know. But my favorite Christmas song of all time is a song called In the First Light. Now, you may have never heard of it, and maybe you have. There's a lot of different versions out there. There's only one version that's good, and it's the version by Glad, and it's an a cappella group, and it's from like the 80s. I think they did it in the 80s. And you could tell if you watch the video, they're definitely in the 80s. 90s? 80s, 90s. You know, same. No, not 6, 7, no. But anyways, so this song, my favorite thing about this song is it's not just talking about the birth of Jesus, but it actually is a song about Jesus' life. It says that he came, and in the first light, he's born. And then he lives this life, and he's sharing all the goodness and the good news of the gospel and how he came to save the world and how he came to bring us peace and how people at the time hated him, and then they crucified him. But then how much greater is it going to be when he comes once again to redeem the entirety of the world? Like, that's my favorite Christmas song. And it's just as this, it reminds me of, like, Jesus didn't just come so we could have Christmas and we could give each other presents. Jesus came so that we could be saved from our sins, so that we could be realigned and we could be in relationship with God, the God of the universe, the one that created you. You weren't created by accident. You weren't created because you weren't here because of happenstance. You're here because God wanted relationship with you. And when that relationship was separated, he sent Jesus. It's insane to me that Jesus would come as a baby and live an entire life. Look, I have a 6-month-old, okay? They're not that fun, okay, at times. When they don't sleep, they are little jerks, okay? You trust me. And then they're hungry and they're little jerks. And you're like, what's your deal, dude? And then you feed them and they spit it all back up. And you're like, why did we feed you in the first place if you're just going to puke it up? Right? Like, but Jesus came as a baby. He experienced all those things. Why did he experience all those things? Why did he experience being a toddler, being a young person, being in her 20s, going through life? Why did he experience that? So he could relate to you. So he could relate to every aspect of our lives. The best way to bust up our routine of life is remember to have this radical awe of the story of Jesus, of Christmas. When you go on Christmas morning, it's not about the presents. Remember, it's about the King. When you put Christ in the center of your resistance, those circumstances and obstacles that want to derail your future will begin to fade away. They won't disappear, but they will become less and less important. It's like when whatever you focus on, everything else around it becomes blurry. And you ever heard of a thing called tunnel vision? You can get that when you're driving. We drive back and forth to Canada sometimes, and the last little bit coming into Spokane when we've been driving for 6 hours, and it's the worst part of the drive because it's just that straight flat, like right outside Spokane. Boring, right? There's nothing to look at. You've been through the pass in Snoqualmie. It's beautiful. You're almost to Spokane. You're like, oh my gosh, I've been driving for like 7 hours. My eyes are burning. You get tunnel vision, and all you can see is just the road ahead of you. You don't see anything else that's going on. That's how we should be when we face resistance. Our tunnel vision should be so focused on Jesus that we don't even see all the other things that are going on around us. We're so Christ-centered that it's the only thing that we see that is in focus. And when we put that in focus, when we put that focus on Christ, these things become less and less important. And instead of focusing on the problem, we're focused on the one solution, which is the King. We need to be relentlessly seeking the King in the midst of our situations. And lastly, the best way to deal with those rifts in your personal life is remember that He is Emmanuel. He is God with us. You have to ponder this hopeful pondering of what could be and how God is going to come through in your life. How is He going to change the situation? We're no longer focused on who and what we don't have, but rather focused on the one that is always with us, the one that will never leave nor forsake us. This is the season to recenter your life and to place Christ at the center of it all. Go ahead and bow your heads.